Today on Between the Lines, a thriller so plausible it is almost too close for comfort, with best-selling author Michael Palmer. Welcome, I'm Barry Kibrick, taping a special episode on the island of Puerto Rico, in the governor's mansion, which at one time was a fortress, and in turn a very fitting setting for a political thriller all about breaking through the security fortresses of America. Michael Palmer is a renowned physician turned writer who is well familiar with the crossroads of politics and medicine. And with his book, A Heartbeat Away, we'll see what happens when those two worlds collide with an ever-greedy security industrial complex and the potential danger lurking behind the scenes of securing America.
Between the Lines with Barry Kibrick is made possible in part by
the government of Puerto Rico's tourism company, encouraging viewers to take a break and relax with a good book. Every page brings a new and exciting experience. Puerto Rico, a novel place to get away.
I'm a writer today because I was a reader when I was 11 years old, and it was...
You do not need to prove your state of happiness to anybody.
Most of these speeches were as much as a month in preparation.
Characters, the heroes in this book, are seekers of truth in a story that involves a lot of corruption.
You don't get a chance to really talk about what's real, and this is the perfect thing to do.
Michael, welcome to Puerto Rico and welcome to Between the Lines.
Gracias, Barry. I'm very happy to be here.
You know, this is a fictional book, but as I say in the introduction, the situations that are here are almost too close for comfort. There is a reality on both, the way you structure it politically, the way you structure it medically. So we're going to talk about it as it's real. So the viewers won't even need to know who these characters are because we're going to discuss those issues. But for their sake as well, set us up a little bit so that they get a sense of what the scenario is that we're discussing.
I always start my books with a what-if question. And in the case of A Heartbeat Away, the what-if question is, what if an extremely contagious, deadly virus is released while the president is delivering the State of the Union message? And basically, that's the theme of the book. And everybody who's anybody is in the House chambers, except for one person, who is called the designated survivor or the doomsday survivor. And it's somebody usually low down on the presidential succession totem, because everybody wants to be around the POTUS, the President of the United States, and this one person is selected and sent away for the inauguration or the State of the Union or whatever it is. So they're the one who's surviving if there's a nuclear bomb or if there's a virus. And basically that's the story.
Now, it's interesting because when you start off, you talk about fail-safe. And what you realize is, and you can't help it, we traveled here to Puerto Rico, and as welcoming as it is when we get here, coming through our own checkpoints on the mainland, so to speak, you know there's no fail-safe, and yet we're going through all this kind of rigmarole, and there's almost, what can I say? There's an issue that's almost conflicting in our own minds. We know nothing's fail-safe, yet we're going through all this aggravation. There seems to be a balance we need, and this book explodes that notion right out of the water. You see balance is almost impossible to achieve.
Well, when I conceived of the story, one of the biggest problems I had to address was, well, how did they do this? How did the bad guys get a virus in through the kind of security that will exist in something like the State of the Union address? And I couldn't proceed with the novel until I could solve that problem. And it's something the reader won't know the answer to for a while in the book, and then eventually it gets revealed.
Now, you're a doctor yourself, so you know the potential and seriousness of this. The president is a former doctor. And as I said earlier on one of my guests with Esmeralda, there's always a little reality in fiction. So that's what makes it so good. But he has a conscience because he's a doctor. He has at one level. On another level, he lies a tremendous amount. But that conscious, we really do want the leader to at least have that consciousness that he's important and that life is important.
He's a special and a difficult character for me because I didn't want him to be plastic. I wanted him to have emotions. I wanted him to be capable of lying. And his name is James Allaire, and as a physician, he has a heart. He has a great deal of compassion, but he also knows the practicalities of politics. And the big thing that happens in this book is he knows the virus that's involved because it's his administration that was developing it. And in fact, he had given up on the project and canceled it, but he didn't know that some of the virus had been stolen.
But that leads to one of the key themes in the book and right now in our own nation, unintended consequences.
Absolutely.
That's the constant probing going on here is the unintended consequences, whether you mean to be good or bad. The unintended consequences are what we have to reap, so to speak, and deal with.
Yeah, the issues that the president had to deal with, for instance, around this virus is that it's capable of controlling the will center in a person's brain, making torture unnecessary. If it worked, it would be the perfect deal, but it doesn't work. It's horrible. And the virus mutates faster than people can keep up with it. And so he finally gives up on the project. But his reasons for developing this biological, it's not even a weapon, it's a tool, I think are right, but the results are not right at all. And now he's stuck with this virus, with the knowledge that everybody in the House chambers, 700 people, are going to die within 10 to 21 days. And he has very little that he can do about it.
Yet you're right, he is a man of poise and dignity. And right now, we are always looking for that, and we can't seem to be finding that in many of our leaders. Not all of them, many of them, my gosh, thank God, they do carry themselves with grace and poise and dignity. But, you know, in this case, they're far and few between.
Well, I certainly think that he starts that way, but that the pressures of his job and now the pressures of the situation can get to any man or woman. And to watch his evolution, in fact, we're not sure whether he's cracking under the pressure or whether these are the effects of the virus within his system, because it does change the way a person thinks, and eventually they become addled. And he must tell his own physician, if I'm starting to look like I don't know what I'm doing or I'm irrational, then you need to pull the plug on my presidency.
Well, but that's where his courage really comes in. You say his courage and dignity. That's where it comes in.
Absolutely. And there's only one person, really, that he can turn to in this situation, a desperate ploy, and that is a scientist, a virologist, whom he, about 9 months before, had ordered to be arrested and thrown into solitary confinement because of very hard evidence that the virologist stole this very virus that he had been working on.
And this is Griff, and
Yes.
I want to use this description. Entire life built around doing the right thing. So opposite of the 90% of the other characters and the politicians in here. A man whose life is built about doing the right thing. Wow. You know, if every one of us, from the street sweeper to the teacher to the president, if we really do the right thing, we would have so fewer problems. But in this case, it's a single individual, and there's a few others, don't get me wrong, but he's one of them, and that trait is, well, it's what saves us.
Well, I'm very pleased that you picked up on that. It's a theme that goes throughout my own life. I wake up every day and meditate, asking myself and God to do the right thing. Let me do the right thing today. And that's what's the most important aspect in my fictional characters as well, the ones I care about, is doing the right thing.
Yeah, and that's that message that needs to come across, because it takes every one of us to do the right thing. That's the other thing you learn here. If none of these battles, this is not 24/7 in the sense where one guy's going to save the world. This requires people to pull together, each one of them doing the right thing. We have to count our blessings when that occurs, because when you have so many people, that's not an easy task to pull off. You have to have a certain value, a certain ethic, be raised with it not only as an individual, but as a nation.
No, I totally agree. And you know, we talk about that this is fiction, that I certainly made up the story, but I didn't make up the people. These are people that I either exist in my mind, exist in real life, but it's important to me to write the sort of fiction that mirrors the way the world is.
Well, one of them that you do, I want to use your words, optimism, our optimism, that we as a people can master any difficulty and achieve unparalleled peace and prosperity. It ties in with that work ethic, it ties in with the dignity, it ties in with all of those things. But that's it right there, our optimism. And it's not a shallow optimism. It's not a, you know, that old classic glass is half full, half empty. No, it's a deep optimism in our soul that we really want to do the right thing and feel confident that others do too.
I'm so pleased to be sort of a spokesperson on a show like this for suspense writing. There's often as I know that you know, there's often a debate about what is literature and what is other. And very often the sort of books that I write, thrillers, suspense, is lumped into other, when in truth, these books are very, very important, and they say things, not just mine, but many, many, many suspense writers, detective mystery writers, and I want to make sure that people realize that there's stuff going on here. This is the stuff of life. As a doctor, I spent my whole life, I'm an ER physician, and I spent my whole life in the ER watching the very depths and heights of human emotion and frailty, the life and death situations, the incredible bravery of people who are facing situations of major injury or major illness. And those are all things that are in my books and in other pieces of fiction.
Another moral dilemma that is not so easy to separate out. Now, this is between a character, Sylvia Chen, and Griff again. And this moral dilemma, which, by the way, is truly a dilemma, because I think you can fall on either side of this particular one and be right. And this, in case, has to do with animal experimentation and versus that of computer experimentation. And the moral dilemma gets more serious when we're talking about the lives of so many people. Do you hold on to your guns and say, well, I'm not going to test on an animal? And then you have to ask the question is, well, then is it more moral to give the first injection to a human? So it can't be. So and this is why there's the dilemma, although I would have to say, you have to still stand on the side of, and they do, even though they don't have to maybe resort to it, you have to stand on the side that you've got to save humanity, and if it requires injecting an animal with something, you must.
I don't know.
That's it. That's why it's the dilemma. I know. That's why I saw you in the book not knowing, but...
I mean, I can see the ultimate problem, but in this book, for instance, the hero, Griff, has spent his whole life as a computer genius, trying to, in fact, develop treatments for viral illnesses that are based wholly on his understanding of DNA and his understanding of viral anatomy and viral physiology. And he feels that his computers can do it, that they can form a treatment, and that he could go right from there to treating humans. Well, and then of course I always knew from the beginning of the book that he's going to be put to the torch to see whether the heat on his feet are going to make him wilt in terms of doing testing on other animals.
But that was my dilemma, though. I'm not sure it would have been a wilt. I'll tell you, because if you are weighing the balance of life against injecting even a chimpanzee, which is the chimpanzee that's our closest evolutionary relative. The moral choice still as humans, and by the way, you know what? You could even take out morality for a minute. The survival instinct alone must allow you to do that. I know the book doesn't have to do that. That's what makes it a mystery and a thriller, but that, you know, I won't let it go without being said on my end that you have to make that choice.
Well, I'm not going to say how...
That's right, I'm not either.
Or the choice that my character makes, but my job as a writer is to raise issues.
That's it.
Not to answer them, because a lot of the issues that I raise don't have an easy answer. They don't have an answer.
The character, Angela Fletcher, she's one of the very interesting women in this particular book, and I want to give a line because she's the only woman that our lead character loves at a deep level. And this is what Griff says about her. She always had more faith in him than he did in himself. And just yesterday I was talking with the lovely people that brought us together here, and they were asking about, you know, how'd you keep this thing going? And I said, you know what? I'd have given it up years ago. It was my wife who had more faith in me. I am convinced that, you know, I don't want to use the cliche behind every great man, because I'll tell you, behind every great woman, we had Esmeralda on. You can see her husband Frank had more faith in her, and or at least so much faith in her. So, but the faith of another human, in this case a woman in a man, it literally is the separation of whether that man is going to make it. You must have someone who believes in you and has faith in you.
I was just thinking, as you were saying that, I was thinking about Jack Nicholson in the movie, I think it's As Good as It Gets, with Helen Hunt, where he plays a writer who's like a total curmudgeon, and as well as someone with OCD. And what's missing from his life and his writing is somebody with faith in you, somebody who cares about you. And I've had the luck, the wondrous luck of having an incredible, supportive family and friends in my life.
Yeah, and you know, you could only chalk that up to the blessings of random luck, because how else, you know, and when it happens though, you must, it must be acknowledged, and more importantly, truly appreciated and be grateful.
Angie's a great character in this book, and Angela Shepard, a reporter for the Washington Post, and she and Griff, the hero, have a very passionate affair some years before in Africa, where she's writing a story, and he essentially runs off on her. And as it turns out, he never came back from this trip because he was too frightened of the fact that he knew he was going to die from his work with deadly viruses, and he didn't want her to be a part of that, that horrible death on his part. And as it turned out, he almost died. He got the infection. He came close to dying, but whatever it was helped him to make it through. And now they meet again 12 years later in this horrible situation with the virus and the president.
But then you leave us with faith. Faith and hope. Always good to have them here. And two things, and they appear, I don't know if you did it on purpose, but they appear very close together. One is with this wobbly moral compass guy, Gladstone. The child who loses faith in the parent also loses hope. And then a little bit down, another one of the real hero in this book, on one level, this Melvin Forbush I like. Sometimes, boss, he's talking to Griff, we reach the point when faith is the only thing we have left. So in this case, both sides see that importance. And again, I like to emphasize, this is not a vacuous faith in belief of something that's sort of mythical. This is more of a deep faith in the human essence, the human consciousness, the human soul.
I love that you're saying all this. It's my friends and people that know me know that I'm anything but a lightweight. I think about this stuff all the time, and yet what I write is often, you know, relegated to the grouping of fluff writing, and nothing that I write is fluff. I certainly try to write an exciting, suspenseful story. That's above all, story, story, story. But in the course of writing the story, my own philosophies of life come through on every page. And that's why I write.
Well, here's one that it's a little lighter piece of philosophy, but I just used it yesterday, so it's kind of funny. It's in the book, and in fact, I've used this in my own life quite a bit. And sometimes, if it's used for evil, which I hope I never do, it's bad. But when it's used for good, I think this works out quite well. And it's this line: "It's better to ask forgiveness than permission." When you sometimes know you've got to do the right thing, you've got to do it, and then if it was wrong, apologize and move on. But that's an important concept on many levels, because a lot of inactivity happens when people are afraid and they have to ask permission. And in a certain sense, it's the ultimate totalitarian state if that's where you're at. It's better sometimes to ask for forgiveness and not permission.
Sometimes you have to do it. You have to just do what you feel is right and worry about it afterwards.
And if there's any big lesson in this, it is, and with scientists have no issue with this, failure. Griff is willing to fail and fail and fail. I think of the Edison line, right? When they ask him, well, how did you live with those failures all the time? And he says, I never failed. I just found 10,000 ways of not to create the light bulb. That's what we have got to envelop more in the consciousness of our country if we're going to solve all of our problems, is not to be afraid to fail and fail and fail and fail. Just keep failing until you figure it out.
I think that's true of a lot of writers, and because writing is just difficult in terms of getting it right. Hemingway's famous for saying that when somebody said, why do you keep writing and rewriting like this so many times? And Hemingway said, I'm really trying to get the words right.
Oh, isn't that
just
beautiful?
what it is. So.
Now, you know, a theme that I like to hit on is appreciation, because without that, you sort of lose a lot of the essence of that moral compass. But you use it in a very interesting way. Because they're working with this biohazardous material, they're way down in the bowels of some sort. I couldn't tell where it was or what it was, they were way down in the bowels of something. And when they rise up, Griff says this: one of the greatest pleasures of going down, and as I say, it's a little double entendre on this thing, right? Because he's talking about going down that way, literally on an elevator going down, was the deep appreciation for the little things after coming back up. And I said, now that's an allegory that can relate to all of us, whether we're working with biohazards or vegetables.
Believe it or not, it went right over my head when I wrote it. And I hear you say it now, and I went, yeah, you know what? That's what I
Glad to help, Michael. It's a pleasure.
So they're in Kansas, and they work in a facility that people who read the Andromeda Strain, Michael Crichton's incredible science novel, would know of that space, 200 feet down below the ground, a level 4 biocontainment facility.
Wow, wow.
The germs down there are extremely scary.
You know, Michael, I could talk about this because I've got a bunch of more things, but I'm noticing we are out of time. But I will say there's one more little thing we should hit about here, and that is this danger that Eisenhower warned us about back in the 50s, because a lot of this plays out with the security industrial complex and the military industrial complex. Without giving anything away, those issues are, from the very beginning, you can smell that there's a problem that we've been forewarned about for a long time. And this is not to be confused with our military or our national security on that level. Our military is not at all to be concerned about in this case. It's the industrial complexes based around the supports that go for them.
You talk about wobbly moral compasses. The more money that's involved, the more power that's involved, the more wobbly the moral compasses get, and the more willing the corporate industrial groupings are to bend the rules. And we see it over and over and over again, and certainly we see it in this book. So.
Well, Michael, we're talking about moral compasses. Thank you, my friend, for sharing yours with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate this chance to talk.
It's my pleasure, and thank you guys for joining us. Now, before Michael leaves, I would like to leave you with these words from A Heartbeat Away. A man does what he must, in spite of personal consequences, in spite of obstacles and dangers and pressures, and that is the basis of all human morality. I'm Barry Kibrick. Between the obstacles and the dangers, do what you must and feel good about being human. Thank you so much, Michael.
Well, thank you.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, want a DVD or transcript of our show, catch an episode online, or receive our weekly updates, go to www.klcs.org/BTL. Between the Lines with Barry Kibrick is made possible in part by
the government of Puerto Rico's tourism company, supporting literacy in America by encouraging reading anytime, anywhere. Each book a world to discover. Puerto Rico, the novel island.
Let me do the right thing today. And that's what's the most important aspect in my fictional characters.
On this episode of Between the Lines, a thriller so plausible it is almost too close for comfort, with best-selling author Michael Palmer. With his book, A Heartbeat Away, we'll see what happens when the worlds of medicine and politics collide with the security of our nation.